So good day, everyone. I wanted to share sutta. It's a very short sutta called the Aggisutta, but it is related to something and a very important topic, which something that doesn't get touched very often, which is the factors of awakening. Okay? So I'll start with that. This is from the Saṁyutta Nikāya, 46.53. Connected discourses on the factors of enlightenment. I'm using Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation over here. Then in the morning, a number of students dressed and taking their bowls and robes entered Shravasti for alms. The Blessed One said, "Students, when wanderers of other sects speak thus, they should be asked, friends, when the mind becomes sluggish, which factors of enlightenment is it untimely to develop on that occasion? And which factors of enlightenment is it timely to develop on that occasion? Then, friends, when the mind becomes excited, which factors of enlightenment is it untimely to develop on that occasion? And which factors of enlightenment is it timely to develop on that occasion?" Being asked thus, those wanderers would not be able to reply. And further, they would meet with vexation. For what reason? Because that would not be within their domain. I do not see anyone, students, in this world with its devas, Mara and Brahma. In this generation, with its ascetics and Brahmins, its devas and humans. Who could satisfy the mind with an answer to these questions except the Tathagat or a disciple of the Tathagat, or one who has heard it from them? On an occasion, bhikkhus or students, when the mind becomes sluggish, it is untimely to develop the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. For what reason? Because the mind is sluggish, bhikkhus, and it is difficult to arouse it with those things. Suppose, bhikkhus, a man wants to make a small fire flare up. If he throws wet grass, wet cow dung, and wet timber into it, sprays it with water, and scatters soil over it, would he be able to make that small fire flare up? No, venerable sir. So too, bhikkhus, on an occasion when the mind becomes sluggish, it is untimely to develop the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. For what reasons? Because the mind is sluggish, students, and it is difficult to arouse it with those things. The sluggish mind, timely. On an occasion, students, when the mind becomes sluggish, it is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of discrimination of states, or you can call this investigation, or in even simpler language, curiosity. So I'll go one by one with all these enlightenment factors, and we'll discuss how they apply in meditation and apply in regular life as well. It is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of discrimination of states or investigation, the enlightenment factor of energy, and the enlightenment factor of rapture. For what reason? Because the mind is sluggish, students, and it is easy to arouse it with those things. Suppose, students, a man wants to make a small fire flare up. If he throws dry grass, dry cow dung, and dry timber into it, blows on it, and does not scatter soil over it, would he be able to make that small fire flare up? Yes, venerable sir. So too, students, on an occasion when the mind becomes sluggish, it is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of discrimination of states, the enlightenment factor of energy, and the enlightenment factor of rapture. For what reason? Because the mind is sluggish, students, and it is easy to arouse it with those things. The excited mind, untimely. On an occasion, students, when the mind becomes excited, it is untimely to develop the enlightenment factor of discrimination of states, the enlightenment factor of energy, and the enlightenment factor of rapture. For what reason? Because the mind is excited, students, and it is difficult to calm it down with those things. Suppose, students, a man wants to extinguish a great bonfire if he throws dry grass, dry cow dung, and dry timber into it, blows on it, and does not scatter soil over it. Would he be able to extinguish that great bonfire? No, venerable sir. So, too, students, on an occasion when the mind becomes excited, it is untimely to develop the enlightenment factor of discrimination of states, the enlightenment factor of energy, and the enlightenment factor of rapture. For what reason? Because the mind is excited, students, and it is difficult to calm it down with those things. The excited mind, timely. On an occasion, students, when the mind becomes excited, it is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration or collectedness, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. For what reason? Because the mind is excited, students, and it is easy to calm it down with those things. Suppose, students, man wants to extinguish a great bonfire. If he throws wet grass, wet cow dung, and wet timber into it, sprays it with water, and scatters soil over it, would he be able to extinguish that great bonfire? Yes, venerable sir. So too, students, on an occasion when the mind becomes excited, it is timely to develop the enlightenment factor of tranquility, the enlightenment factor of concentration, and the enlightenment factor of equanimity. For what reason? Because the mind is excited, students, and it is easy to calm it down with those things. But mindfulness, students, I say, is always useful. Let's take a moment to just let that sink in. Just close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath. Exhale slowly. Relax your body. And let those words just move around in your mind. Settle in a little bit before we discuss further. Slowly open your eyes with a smile. So we have 7 factors of enlightenment or awakening factors, factors that allow us to get great understanding, deep understanding about our mind. So we talked about this. I'll just read out their Pali names as well so that you can connect with those if you've heard it. So what does the Buddha say? First, it's the last thing he says in the sutta. It says mindfulness or sati or smriti is always useful as an awakening factor. So can think of it as almost a base requirement. This is irrespective of the condition of the mind, whether it is excited, whether it is dull. It is something that is always useful, even to the getting to the point of understanding that our mind is either excited and restless, or it is dull and it is full of sloth. To be even able to be registering that, to understand that, we need to have our mindfulness in action. So that is almost a fulcrum of this of the awakening factors. And then further, the Buddhas divided the awakening factors into two categories: those that help with a restless or excited mind, which are pasaddi or prashabdi. This is tranquility, relaxing the mind body; samadhi, collectedness or concentration; and the third is upekha, which is equanimity. And we'll go into each one of these. On the other hand, for a dull mind, to counter a dull mind, what are the factors that the Buddha talks about? It is dhamma vichaya, investigation of dhamma or mental phenomena, also known as discrimination, also known as curiosity. Simply, it can be talked of as curiosity. The second factor for a dull mind that the Buddha prescribes is energy or determination, virya. And the third factor is rapture or joy, which is piti. So let's take a step back first and understand why these awakening factors are related to restlessness and to sloth, right? So when we talk about the development of both samatha and vipassana, so we need to understand that samatha and vipassana are both outcomes of how our mind is at a certain time, how we are developing it, what is the state of it. Samatha refers to tranquility, calmness. So we need a certain clarity, a balance, a calmness, a tranquility in our mind. And vipassana refers to insights, right? So in a way, we need to have enough energy, enough alertness to be able to see things. So therefore, we don't want our mind to get sluggish. At the same time, we don't want it to get so restless that we do not have the calm or tranquility to be able to see it, right? So I always give the analogy of reading a book in a well-lit room, right? So you need that well-lit room, but you need to be alert enough to be able to read the book and get some insights out of it. So both things are important. So if we get too peaceful, we may tend towards laziness, sloth, or sleepiness, not be alert enough to observe the mechanisms of the mind. And if we get too excited, we may not have the clarity, even though we are seeing a lot of mechanisms of the mind, we're chasing after them, we're trying to make sense of them, but it is proliferating into more and more restlessness. We are not seeing them enough in isolation, or seeing them with enough of a balanced you know, point of view to be able to make sense. So think of taking a photo while you're on the move, right? So you're likely to end up blurring it. You want to be still and stable so you can take a good photograph. So it's the same thing, not just in practice. So where are these awakening factors used? These awakening factors are used not just in practice, especially in deeper states of the practice, but it can be used in regular life as well. So let's come to that. So typically, the first time that people feel that they really need to use these factors, right? So that comes in deep practice. So when your mind starts going into the arupa jhanas, your mind starts to settle down, especially in the seventh and eighth jhana, your mind starts to become very calm. At that time, the slightest disturbance or slightest bit of restlessness can really change the texture of your mind quality, right? And at the same time, the calmness can go into a dullness. So that is the first time where a lot of meditators start to actively see the difference, that either my mind is getting too restless or it is getting so peaceful that I'm stopping to, I'm no longer registering what's actually happening in the mind. Eventually, the education happens when we see how the mechanisms of the mind unfold, right? How our attention moves from one thing to another. As we are moving from one thing to another, how are different mechanisms layering, right? So how are different phenomena coming into our mind? How are our concepts? How are our opinions? How are our ways of thinking? How are our conditioning? All of these coming together to form that moment. So we need to be able to see that. So that's the first time it happens. Now the challenge is, how do you do it in a jhana? As soon as you start to voluntarily try and introduce any of these factors, it becomes harder, right? So you come out of the jhana. So typically, one way to do is start using these in regular life, start using them in the uh, rupa jhanas, the lower jhanas, and your mind starts to get an intuition. Just like with riding a bike, it starts to get an intuition about how to ride the bike well. With the awakening factors, the more you use them volitionally in out of the jhanas in regular life, the more your mind starts to understand how to balance these two factors. Okay, so let's go through the individual factors and see how we can apply them either in our practice or in regular life, right? So let's start with the factors. So mindfulness, as we discussed, is like the fulcrum of the awakening factors. Remembering to observe how your attention moves from one thing to another. We use it in the practice. In the practice, it happens indirectly as our mind goes away every time we use the 6 hours, every time we recognize, right? So it is sharpening our mindfulness. It is telling our mind that it is important for us to recognize when the mind wanders away. The same thing you can bring into regular life every time through the day. You have decided to do some task, or you sit and meditate, or you're busy with some activity and your mind wanders. Every time that happens, just recognize that your mind has wandered away. Make a note of it. Every time you make a note of it, your mind says it is important to observe the attention. What happens most of the time is in throughout our regular life before we start a meditation practice. Typically, we just land up at a certain moment and then we start responding to whatever story is there in our mind, whatever is happening outside. A lot of the work, a lot of the agency that we have over improving our experience of life, improving our happiness, dealing with suffering, that actually happens on the path to the point where we suddenly feel, I'm here, I need to respond to this. But there is a lot of action that is happening up to that, right? So when we start determining to watch the movement of the mind, we start learning more about this phase that precedes actually reacting to the world, right? So simply learning to make a note of whenever your mind wanders away in regular life, whenever you've decided to do something and something else has happened, don't simply drag your mind back because you need to get this done. Try to use the 6 hours, do it as a proper process, recognize that your attention has wandered away, release it, let it be. You're not, it is uninvited. If it is not urgent, you don't need to tend to it, and you don't need to fight with it also. It came up because the conditions are right. Relax any tightness in your mind and body when letting go of the craving, smile, and come back to whatever you're doing. So the more often you do this in regular life, the more your mindfulness sharpens. So instead of just yanking the attention back or just chasing after one thing after another thing and the next thing, the 6 hours, using the 6 hours every time you're working on something, right? Making your task, your activity, something like the object of meditation. That is one excellent way of continuing to train mindfulness. And it's when mindfulness is sharp during the practice, when you go into the deeper, very subtle jhanas, right? So at that time, the mind starts recognizing early when it is moving towards something else, it's getting distracted by something else, or it is getting sluggish, it is getting dull, or it is getting restless, right? So it starts understanding that. The second thing that helps, especially with the enlightenment factors, is when you recognize, and you can do this in some sittings, not necessarily all the sittings, when you recognize that your mind has wandered away, at that time, what you can do is you can also just make a quick note whether there is restlessness, right? Did too many things uh, come up, and did your mind want to chase after all of those things, right? Or did your mind just stop observing what's happening in the mind very keenly? It just became dull, right? So you can make a note of that. When it becomes sluggish, you'll find that you're ho-humming through the meditation, and things are coming up, but you aren't really paying attention to it. Mind wanders, you don't care about it, it wanders to the next thing. So that is the sluggishness. So you can make a note when you recognize as part of the 6 hours before bringing your mind, you can make a note of what is the state of your mind, whether it is restless, whether it is sluggish. So let's look at the factors related to the dull or sluggish mind, right? So here the Buddha talks about the factor of tranquility. And how do we tranquilize? Prashaddi is to relax. Always when I'm sorry, it is untimely to develop tranquility. Got that wrong. So when the mind becomes excited, when the mind becomes restless, at that time it is timely to develop tranquility, right? And what do? We relax the tightness in our mind and body. So if our mind is chasing after one thing or the other, there is a heightened craving. What is this restlessness? This restlessness is essentially a search for information. Our mind feels a little insecure, a little unsafe, and it is searching for information because it is either looking for comfort in any new information, or it is afraid that maybe I'm missing something that is important. So we all get that feeling where sometimes, you in your life, you would have left for some place and you felt like there is something that is left to be done, or you have nothing to do and you're pretty sure you're forgetting some important task, right? Those that is the kind of thing that drives a lot of restlessness. So at that time, using tranquility, relaxing the tightness and tension in your mind can actually bring a feeling of less craving for that information, a less uh, craving for safety, because you're finding safety, security, and comfort by relaxing your mind. The second thing to do when the mind becomes excited is to use the awakening factor of collectedness or samadhi. So, how do you do that? With samadhi, we simply we just make a determination to stay with the object, right? Sometimes when we are meditating, right, so we actually forget about the object. Like we get so curious about other things that are happening, even when we come back to the object. For a lot of people, it happens like, for example, if you're using metta, it becomes just a prop. I need to create some kind of a warm feeling. I need to create a little vibration in my head, right? And we actually forget about the object. It is something that is happening. It's a vague thing that is different. So coming back to the object, giving importance to the object, reminding ourselves that to develop collectedness, we need to stay with the object. So that's how we develop collectedness, making the object front and center, right? So instead of keeping it somewhere else because you're trying to watch some other mechanism, or you're trying to analyze how your sitting is going, instead of doing that, bring your object of meditation front and center. The third thing that is useful when the mind becomes excited and restlessness is the factor of equanimity. What do we mean by equanimity or upekha? Whether something is painful or pleasant, feels painful or pleasant, we simply identify it for what it is. We accept that this is painful or this is pleasant. We don't get take it to the next stage where we are starting to get driven by the like of something that is pleasant and the dislike of something that is painful, right? So how does this happen? A lot of times you'll see in your practice, if your mind gets distracted, immediately the next thing that happens is a aversion, that I'm not good enough to do this, or why has my mind become distracted again, or why does this thought keep coming up again and again? I have 6 heard it so many times. So aversion can come. The other thing that happens, and this is what we do with the release step, right? So we are making a determination not to go chasing after whatever came up, nor do we fight. The other thing that can come up is you remember something that you've been wanting to think about or you've forgotten about, but it's something important in your life. And it comes up in the meditation, and your mind has this little bit of temptation that I have nothing else to do right now. Let me think about this, right? The same thing happens. So you need to have equanimity, whether something that is pleasant comes up or something that is painful comes up. Right? We recognize it for what it is and we release it. We don't chase after it. And the same thing is also to be done with the quality of our meditation, right? So if you have a lot of distractions, if you add aversion, a dislike that distractions are coming, then it's only going to further make it worse. So equanimity is very important. 3 factors that help with a excited or restless or agitated mind. Relaxing the mental and bodily formations, tranquility that allows a little feeling of comfort, safety, that I don't need to be chasing after more information to be safe, to be uh, secure, right? Giving importance, allowing your mind to collect around the object of meditation, right? The enlightenment factor of samadhi or collectedness, coming back to it, keeping it front and center, not just letting it be something vague that is also happening in your mind. And finally, the factor of equanimity. No matter whether pleasant or painful feelings come up, recognize them for being pleasant or painful feeling. Do not get carried away by the like or dislike of them having come up. So that's how we take it from excited to well balanced, right? So we want go towards samatha. We're losing the samatha or the balance when the mind becomes excited, agitated, and restless, and we're using these factors to move towards that state of more samatha. What happens if you're already in a very calm state? At that time, the Buddha says it is untimely to develop these factors, right? So what might happen is if you relax further, you may lose the little an edge on the alertness that you need to actually understand what's happening. Then your ability to get vipassana, ability to get insights starts suffering. Same thing with collectedness. If you get too involved in the object, you will stop seeing other things that are happening in the mind. And that's where you're really learning. Your mind is with the object, it isn't straying too much, but all the things that are starting to happen, mental phenomena that are starting to happen, some of them are developing more than the others, some of them are vying for your attention more than the others, some of them sometimes end up taking your attention away. It is in this process that we are seeing the links of dependent origination play out, and we learn about them through direct experience, right? So if we get too involved with the object, then we will stop seeing these things come up. And finally, equanimity, again, it's the same thing. If we work towards more and more equanimity, at some point it is possible that we slip into, if we can go from equanimity to apathy or indifference, right? So if we are recognizing that something is painful, but we don't need to dislike it. We are recognizing something is pleasant, but we don't need to chase after it, right? But after a while, the tendency of the mind is, if we keep going that direction, we may start to become indifferent towards it. So equanimity at a right level, so being able to not get swayed by painful or pleasant feeling is leading to equanimity, but at an extreme level, it can lead to indifference. So the Buddha advises against using this if the mind is becoming sluggish. So let's look at the other side. Now, if the mind has become sluggish, what is it timely to develop? So here it is timely to develop the factor of investigation or discrimination of states. Dhamma Vijaya, right? So we are trying to understand phenomena. So what do we need to increase our ability to investigate? We need to have curiosity. One simple way is when to have curiosity is as we are returning from doing the 6 hours, we make a little determination that next time when my mind wanders, I will catch it a little early. Right? So there is this curiosity. You're not just coming back and staying with the object because that is a punishment given to you. You're coming back to the object because you're keeping one end anchored. You're keeping your attention anchored every time it wanders to A, B, C, D, anything. Right? You bring it back here. So when we keep bringing back, when we have one side anchored, the motion, the movement that attention makes, the whole journey that it takes to a distraction, it becomes a little easier to observe that than if we were going to from one thing to the second thing to the third thing to the fourth thing, right? So just so the discrimination of states is what is happening, or the investigation, dhamma vijaya, that is where we are learning about dependent origination. And to develop this factor, we simply awaken a little curiosity. We can ask ourselves a very practical way, simply say, let me try and catch it earlier. Or what happens before my mind got distracted? Or when does the process of my mind getting distracted start? So you can ask these questions, just it'll bring up the energy a little bit. The next factor is that of virya, or energy, or determination. So it is can be also translated as drive, right? So virya. How do you actually use this practically? Right? Simply determine to take your practice a little longer, right? So if your mind is feeling sluggish, it says, let me be more attentive for the next 2 minutes, next 3 minutes, next 5 minutes. Let me extend my sitting by 10 minutes. I'm starting to get restless. Let me calm myself down, or I'm starting to feel bored, or I'm starting to feel like I want to get up now. Simply make the determination to sit a little longer, or to pay attention a little longer, right? Remind yourself that this is important. Use that as energy to extend your attentiveness a little longer. Use that energy. There are other ways. I mean, these are some ways that you can bring up your energy. We all know what it is to bring up energy or determination to do a task, right? So a little bit of determination if we are starting to become sluggish. Finally, the awakening factor of rapture or joy. And a great way to do this is the smile, right? And the smile works both for rapture as well as for energy. So that's a great thing about the smile. And you can also have a little laugh at yourself, right? When you do the 6 hours, you can laugh at yourself that the mind is being uncooperative, being silly, making you run around in circles, right? So you can also have a little laugh, right? So joy or rapture, which is piti or priti, energy, which is virya, and dhamma vichaya, which is investigation or discrimination of states. These are useful when the mind becomes lazy or sluggish. What happens if you use them when the mind is already restless? Your mind is already running after a number of things, and you start becoming more curious. It starts multiplying the restlessness. It starts looking at everything that is happening. Why is this happening, or why is that happening, or what happened? What story took me to that next story? Your mind starts getting hyperactive, thinking about that. What happens when you put too much energy? Then your samatha or tranquility starts to get destabilized. The calm that has developed in your mind, by relaxing your mind, that starts getting destabilized. You start getting tighter, right? And the same with too much joy. If you try to bring too much joy, if you go from a smile to a laugh, again, it introduces more restlessness, more noise into your practice. So we want to have that balance between tranquility, calm, balanced mind, and an inquisitive, alert, observant mind. Right? So that is the thing. And if you look at any situation in life, that is where we perform best. If we are too agitated, we don't have the clarity, the sharp mind to actually deal with the situation well. And if we have balance, but we don't have enough sharpness of our mind, again, it lets us down in dealing with any situation. So these things can be used in mind as well. So in daily life as well. Factor of energy, asking yourself to push through a task that is challenging by spending a little incremental amount of time. Making something into a game, asking questions about it, using your curiosity instead of just getting stuck at something that is not happening, right? So, for example, if you're stuck at some point in some work that you need to do, asking questions about it. Why can't this be done a different way? Or whom can I rope in to help me, right? So having that curiosity or bringing joy into that activity, right? If you're feeling sluggish about it, if you don't feel very interested, making it into a game, treating it like a game and playing it instead of feeling like you're being forced by someone or asked by someone to do it. So these factors, the more we practice them in regular life, the more we incorporate them as part of the 6 hours as well. Like when we recognize the state of our mind. When we release, we understand the difference between painful and pleasant feeling coming up versus chasing after it or fighting with it, right? So simply letting it go without chasing or fighting with it. Relaxing the tension and tightness in the mind, smiling, bring up joy, and coming back to the object. So if you see in the 6 hours, actually all the awakening factors are also included in that. And as you return, also you come back to the object at the same time, you're also making a determination to be curious about how the mind moves again. And every time we do the 6 hours, it is naturally refining our mindfulness as well. So that's what I wanted to share few thoughts about the enlightenment factors. Happy to hear any thoughts if anyone has tried applying this to their practice, to regular life, and what your experience has been, any doubts that you've had about this. It'd be lovely to see. Yeah.
Thank you, Rajiv Ji. Yeah, for me, because my mind is naturally more often restless than it is sluggish, because my habit really for a long time, I'm kind of like a doer, like I am getting better at it, but used to be like, daily when I'm working, I find satisfaction by ticking off the list, the task list, Um, so recently I start to appreciate the relaxed step in the 6 hours more than before, because I realized that it's not that I haven't done the relaxed step in the 6 hours before, but recently when I start to how should I say, pay more attention to the quality of my relax and at that step in the 6R, then only I start to realize also the quality of the meditation itself starts to change. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but this is the best that I can
It makes a lot of sense. So especially if
Yeah.
you understand that restlessness is something that you normally combat with, you're directly using that awakening factor. Right? So and it's always useful to see this seesaw. I don't think it's very natural for us to, if we are restless, right? So we are not naturally restless. We are thinking about the tasks we need to do. We are not thinking about the state of restlessness or sluggishness, right? And if we are sluggish, we are thinking of ways to avoid doing things rather than seeing the balance between. So I think this is a very Uh, I think it's a very unique perspective of the Buddha to use these two things, right? The having that balance of, that I need to be very calm. I need to have my camera held very clearly, right? And I need to have the alertness to zoom in to the place that I really need to shoot, something like that, right? So both things are equally important. If I don't point and zoom at the right thing, then I don't get to learn. And if I'm moving around and I'm not able to capture something very well, even then I'm not able to learn, right? So I think that balance is very important. So if restless and if that is something you see in yourself, then maybe you can also work with the others, right? So see if you get irritated when your mind gets distracted, right? So make sure when you release or you can also, so when you do that, when you release, you're uh, making sure you're not letting go of any aversion that is also coming up, right? So if you can bring in equanimity, and when you come back to the object, don't do it as a task, another task as a to-do list, right? Remember what the object is and then come back to it. Remember you're sharing metta and what it is, and come back to a genuine wish, right? So don't just rush back to something. Try these. I mean, these are the three factors that will help you with restlessness. So maybe it might help. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. So we have a couple of dial-ins today that are not our regular Sunday people. So just inviting anyone to come off mute and maybe use this opportunity to ask questions.
Yes, any other doubts about the practice also can be asked, right? So anything related to the sutta is good. So ask for help, because I mean, it actually helps everyone, including me, because I get to learn something when I hear your question. It's a unique perspective. I get to learn something in when my mind tries to, answer that. Yeah.
I have a question, and that is not related to the awakening factors. When you sit on a meditation, you are in a deep state of meditation, and all of a sudden, from nowhere, some thought that comes up. Maybe on childhood, something what happened in childhood, or what happened 15 years back. So
Yes.
there are, the causes and conditions are not at that time. I'm not thinking about anything related to that. But how come this all of a sudden just come like a passing cloud and just comes and just immediately whisk through the mind?
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah. So I think, I mean, what see that is a question of why. Why did this come up? And it's more useful normally to look at like how.
I'm sorry,
Sorry,
I
can you hear
couldn't get
me?
you. Yeah, I can. Now I
Yeah.
can.
So I would just say it's more valuable in general to ask the question, how did my attention move from whatever I was doing to that, right? So the process, not the
No,
content. Story is not
no, the
important. The process.
attention is not moving. Attention is not moving. Catching it immediately. But what I'm saying is, it's just generates all of a sudden, and then
Right.
in a fraction of seconds, it just you know
Yes.
that your mindfulness is
Right. So typically the reason that it would come up is there is some craving attached with that memory, right? And typically the things that are insignificant in your life, no craving, right? You uh, paid for a meal 15 years back at a restaurant. It's not going to, unlikely to come up unless there was something that happened while you were doing that, right? So there is some craving that is coming up, that has been attached. And as you're moving into states of lower and lower craving, right, a lot of these things can pop up. I mean, there is the idea of different actions, then going through a phase of fruition, and at that time they have a certain result that comes out from them, right? So it is uh, these are things that are alive and there in your mind. somewhere, right? And when the conditions are right, they come up. Maybe something that you saw, that you experienced recently, it is something related maybe to a theme of that, and it's somewhere in the back, and maybe other thoughts that came up, lead to that. So don't worry about why that particular thought came up. Just see, I mean, I think what here is where we need the equanimity, the factor of equanimity, that it comes up rather than chasing after it, right? What's more important for us to understand the process by which it came up and then it went away. The story itself or the content itself is not so important. So that's my little thought on that.
Hi, teacher. I have a question, please.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's just me or it's common that I'm new to the practice, and I noticed that since I started meditating, I don't need a lot of sleep. I only sleep like 4 or 5 hours, but I still feel great. So I'm not sure if the duration during the meditation can help the body rest and can substitute the actual sleep, or or it or it's not related. Like what's your thought on that? Because usually in the past when I did
I
not
would
meditate, yeah.
so actually
If I Yeah, go ahead, please. Sorry.
Yes, so sleep has a very different structure, very different functions and meditation, right? So I would not recommend it, right? So for some people, naturally, you may feel more energetic, but over time, I think sleep is a very, very important part of your basic, neuron regeneration and body repair and all these things. So I would say at least don't, I mean, if you are sleeping less and you're feeling very energetic and very good, that's great, but don't do it intentionally. Don't do the arithmetic and say, I have meditated for 2 hours, so let me sleep 2 hours less. So I'd recommend against doing that, because sleep is actually something across the world people are getting less and less of because of, exposure to digital media and things which actually make the mind take more time to calm down, right? So I would recommend don't do it. If you Some people do feel more energetic, feel comfortable with lesser sleep, but it's not, I mean, since we are not seeing exactly what it is doing to your body, it's better to not at least intentionally reduce your sleep because you're meditating, right? So if it happens automatically, that's fine. Just make sure you continue. I mean, anytime you start to feel that during the day you're less energetic, or you feel less rested, or you feel more nervous, right? So it's possible to be very energetic because you're running on adrenaline, right? You're running on restlessness and agitation. So if you're able to feel calm and refreshed, right, and comfortable through the day, so then you're fine. Otherwise, I think definitely you should make up your sleep. Don't compromise on your sleep to get more meditation in.
Thank you.
Hello, can I speak?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I have faced the sluggishness in my sittings. There have been times when I've seen my mind wander from one place to another, and not being able to come back to the object of meditation. And yes, though I am witnessing that it is, and I have also witnessed that there have been times when I have not been able to bring up the warm feeling also. And I'm in the process of observation that yes, I am observing everything. At the same time, I'm not being able to bring the warm feeling. So and I could have spent 30 minutes also doing the entire process, that the mind is not getting collected. So the only thing what I found at such a moment was, I remember listening to Bhante Vimala Ramsi once, that you can laugh at it or maybe just smile, like you said some time ago. So that was the only thing I experienced this twice. So once I found myself getting into the guilt that today it's not happening right, or the way the way it always happens today. Then again, watching the mind getting into opinions and coming out of that, and just smiling is all I've been able to do whenever I've encountered such a situation in my sittings. So anything more if you would like to add, it would be great. Thank you so much.
I think that's perfectly fine. I think there are days when the mind will be uncooperative, and the best thing to do is say that, okay, the mind is a different way. Let's see how it's behaving today. Right? So it's a good thing to bring in a little bit of curiosity about how it is operating, and having a little bit of a laugh at how it's being, bringing some equanimity into it. There's nothing good or bad, right? So at any time we're spending actually seeing the process of becoming someone, right? In every moment, seeing the process of the mind rather than just reacting at the end of the mind having process, right? So anytime we're doing that, it is valuable. So so I'd just say, use that opportunity to observe mind in a different setting, right? So maybe see, also all of this, the practice is also preparation for challenging times in life, right? So at that time, we cannot always muster the same meditative states that we do in free practice, right? So it's useful to be able to deal with different starting points of mind and be able to still bring in your mindfulness, your collectedness, and right effort. And like, these are the three tools that we have, right? So to be able to exercise them. So, for example, in ocean swimming, one of the things is you need to learn many things, right? So you can't, for example, in the pool, you can swim only even if you can breathe in one direction. But in the ocean, depending on where the waves are coming from, you have to keep changing the direction, right? Or there are many things you need to do to be able to swim in an ocean, right? So right now we are practicing in a pool, but different situations of the mind that are there, whether you're doing it after you are agitated or you're doing it in a very short period, all those different situations allow you to build different skills, so that when you go into a more chaotic environment, right? So at that time, these primary skills are what you're able to use, right? So I think it's about a lot about the attitude, right? So if you just say that, hey, this is different situation in which to learn more about my mind, that kind of just takes care of it.
Yes, because I have kept myself curious to be in such situations also. I don't, it's like when something like this happens, I'm curious and I keep wondering that let me sit for some more time, and I've heard this from you and I practice that as well, that let me sit for some more time and let me see what's happening around. So yes, that does help us to investigate more and in a better frame of understanding how the mind will not always work the way we want it to be, and there are different ways to it. So yeah, thank you for that.
Great. So I think maybe we can take one last comment or sharing or question, and then we'll bring the session to that. All right, let's share merits. Anything good that we have gained, let's share it with those who may benefit from it. May suffering ones be suffering free.
And the fear struck fearless be.
May the grieving shed all grief.
All grief, and may all beings find relief.
May all beings
May
share
all beings share this merit, that we have the sacrifice
this
for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness.
May beings
May
in
being inhabiting space and that they
Such
vast amount of mighty power
share
shade
this
this melt of us.
May they long
May
protect.
they long protect the Buddha's dispensation.
Ah.
So, so. Thank you, sir. Thanking you all. Wishing all happiness. Thank you.
Have a lovely week, everyone, and see how you can bring these factors into your daily life. It's all preparation. So when we go into deeper states, when you're in the jhana, all your efforts in regular life are going to feedback. So what you learn in the jhanas and the deep practice is going to feed back into daily life, and using these awakening factors in daily life feeds back into your deepest jhana. Have a lovely weekend. Keep smiling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.